No one is looking at the broader investment in Africa, which I think is hugely exciting. And it marries up with the evolution in technology that we are seeing. So, in terms of Africa, you're looking at the youngest demographics in the world. You're looking at increasingly cheap access to data that people have, rural areas or non-rural areas. And of course, access and the cost of data needs to come down. But with that come opportunities which live on top of data. So let's talk about healthcare. There are companies which have developed amazing point-of-care diagnostic little machines. So if you can distribute those to rural areas on a commercially viable basis, and literally from not exactly drops of blood, but using blood tests, you can test for whatever number of diseases. That information via data technology goes back to major healthcare centers. A diagnosis is made right there. Medicine is delivered via drone technology. Right there, you've got opportunities living on the platform of data that is accessible for healthcare, agriculture. We've got some amazing very fertile agricultural land. I've come across and invested in a company in UK which is testing but has by and large developed technology to increase crop yields by 20 to 30%. So now you're talking about solving food security issues, and you could be utilizing land in Africa for that on a very cheap basis. So I think opportunities in Africa are limitless.
What do you see as the biggest risk, though, to some of that growth in 2026? Potentially a bubble, people become more risk averse, What would you say is maybe the concern for EMs in African markets that are maybe just starting to grow in some of these areas?
I think risk aversion globally is on the rise. And again, we are by and large talking about listed markets. Yeah. So we have the S&P 500 at record highs. We have the fact that it's been driven by Magnificent Seven. So people are rather sitting in cash than they want, and moving money out of listed markets. I don't think that the investment case for Africa has changed. The investment case for Africa has always been about, at the tier, top of the cake. It's like the icing on a cake, is this concept of corruption. But I'm very pragmatic about corruption. Corruption exists everywhere, absolutely everywhere. Functional, dysfunctional corruption, it's everywhere. Beneath that is that tier of private-public partnerships. But I view this public side of it as a little bit more fluid than talking to governments, private sector, internationals talking to government. I see the multinationals talking to players on the ground who knows how the economy or how the politics or regulation works. So you've got a lot of opportunities in that space without necessarily involvement of government. And, if you are partnering with local players, they usually have access to cutting through the red tape and government. So that's your second tier. And then the third tier, which is really interesting, is that you've got a very large informal economy inside Africa and in Africa. And there are opportunities for tapping into that informal economy. So we're not talking about people living on social benefits. We're talking about people making a living out of commerce, where there's absolute opportunity to tap into that and see what technology could enable informal economy. And again, commercial. All of it is based on capitalism.
Yeah. Still quite a bit of development, though, that needs to happen.
Absolutely. But again, data, technology, access to data in those communities creates opportunities.